I wanted to ask you the difference that you see from the time you were younger to now in terms of the world of autism, because you grew up in the world watching what's happening. So what is your view on the world of autism now?
Getting children that are not talking in earlier educational treatment, that is something that has really improved a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a 3-year-old that's not talking, you start working with them right now. No psychoanalysis, it's behavior type therapy, teaching them skills, teaching a child how to take turns, make up a little game, taking turns, teaching them the words for different things. Start out with food and toys, first of all, things that the child's interested in. You've got to engage these little kids. Now, when they get older, they kind of go into 2 different groups. You've got the ones that stay, get speech and become verbal. You've got some that remain really nonverbal. Then you got some kids that are socially awkward with speech delay, they're really mild autism. That's half of the people that bring you things like the iPhone. In fact, if you got rid of all of the autism genetics, there'd be no computers. There'd be no cameras for this interview.
Right.
Because the people that are the techies, little bit of that autism trait gives you somebody that can make an iPhone.
Absolutely. How can we, there will be no comparison, right, to trying to get a job between someone who thinks like
I can't emphasize enough, build on strengths. My art ability, by the time I got to be 7 and 8 years old, was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do all kinds of different art.
Uh-huh.
We got to start thinking about what kind of careers these kids can go into, because they tend to be good at one thing and bad at something else. We need to have more emphasis on the thing they're good at. It could be mathematics, it could be art, it could be writing, it could be music.
Right.
I know in Brazil that music is a very popular profession. There's a lot of these kids that can be musically gifted, but that needs to be developed. Because if you're not exposed to a musical instrument, then there's no way you're going to learn how to play it. You do need some lessons.
Right. So actually not relying on the talent, but developing the skills and teaching them skills that, as you're saying, is really important.
Well, talents have to be developed, because in art, I just wanted to do the same horse head picture over and over again. I was encouraged to do lots of different pictures and to use different media. Maybe use pencil, then use paints, use crayons, music. Teach the child several different instruments. See which one he can really excel in. Because you've got to work on developing. There's innate ability. But too often people work on the thing they're bad at. Let's work on the thing they can be good at. And there's a lot of people on the autism spectrum that are very good at music. And I know in Brazil that music's really important in your culture.
Right.
So you have a child that's good at music, let's develop that. There's lots of great jobs in music.
Right. So developing jobs for people on the spectrum. Tell us a
Well,
little
I
bit
can tell you,
about
there's
that.
a lot of artists that are on the spectrum.
Right.
There's all kinds of people out there that are undiagnosed. I worked in construction for 20 years on my cattle handling projects. Half the cattle in North America are handled with equipment I designed. It's a piece of equipment called the center track restrainer system. All the big plants in North America have it. I developed that piece of equipment. And I worked with a whole lot of different millwrights and welders, really smart, creative guys. They were on the autism spectrum, but they were not diagnosed.
Right.
They were guys my age, and they had the 50s and 60s upbringing where behavior was taught in a much more systematic way. And they managed to get jobs. And the other thing that's really wrecking a lot of kids today is video game addiction. And they are not going on to become game designers. They're ending up in the basement on Social Security payments. Got to limit the video game playing.
Right.
I have another book called The Loving Push that I did with Deborah Moore, and we got a really great chapter in on the video game addictions.
Right, and that's a huge issue because families feel like, oh, they're happy playing video games, let them be happy. So a lot of our families struggle with understanding that it's not only about being happy, it's about developing skills for life.
I want to see kids be successful. And my ability in art ended up helping me in the cattle industry. I'm a visual thinker, so it was obvious to me to look at things that cattle were seeing. Well, to somebody who thinks in words, it's not so obvious to look at what cattle were seeing. So I turned my art ability into my animal behavior stuff.
Yes.
Kids have also got to learn work skills, and that needs to start like in early teens, 12, 13 years old. Let's get a job in a store, anything. They've got to learn that discipline and responsibility of a job. And I'm seeing too many kids graduate from high school, even graduate from college, and they haven't learned the work skill, be on time, time management. I was taught those things when I was young. At 15, I was cleaning horse stalls every day.
Right.
And I liked the fact that I was responsible for running a horse barn. That made me proud. It taught me work skills.
Right.
When I was in college, I had career-relevant internships. Really important. I'll tell that to every student. try-on careers.
Right.
You don't want to study for a career you find out you hate. Make sure you study for a career you're going to like.
Right. And so in terms of education, right? How was your path in terms of education with having autism? Were you
You just can't get away from autism.
Right.
Let's get away from
Right.
making kids that are different and creative be successful.
Right.
Went to a very good little elementary school.
Yeah.
I had a lot of trouble in high school. I got bullied and teased.
Oh.
Only places I was not bullied and teased was specialized interests like electronics or horses. Ended up going away to a boarding school. There's some kids in the U.S. they'll take them out and homeschool 'em. But if you take a fully verbal kid out and homeschool him, he better get a job.
Right.
Outside the home, outside from the family. They've got to learn how to work.
Yes.
And just use your networking in the neighborhood. Oh no, in Brazil you got tons of little shops.
Right.
You got some friends got a little shop. You get this kid and put him to work there. Now the thing you got to warn the shopkeeper is, if he makes social mistakes, don't be vague. Just correct it in private. Also, no long strings of verbal information. Write down a pilot's checklist for the tasks.
Good.
That's going to make it a whole lot easier. He might take a longer to train, but when he gets trained, he's going to be really good. And there's a lot of art and music in Brazil. And there's a lot of people on the autism spectrum that are very good at art and music.
Sure.
One artist gets labeled autistic, he's addicted to video games. There's another artist that just gets labeled weird, and he's out having a good art career.
Yeah.
If a child has echolalia where they repeat, that's a problem with the language processing circuits.
Sure, absolutely.
And this kid might start, doing some art. Develop that art.
Right.
I would just draw horse heads over and over again. Well, let's draw the horse's saddle. Let's draw someplace where the horse goes. Or the child loves trains.
Expanding.
Well, you expand it. Let's write about or draw where the train travels to.
Right.
You take that fixation and you broaden it out. But to psychoanalyze little kids is just stupid, and they're not psychotic.
Right.
That's absolutely beyond ridiculous.
Right.
In fact, schizophrenia is a late teenager, early adult onset disorder. Autistic symptoms are an earlier onset disorder,
Right.
looking strictly at the neurology.
Right. And so that's why we want to educate people that it's an early onset, is a condition that is treatable, and early intervention is so important.
Early intervention is essential.
Right.
Early intervention is absolutely essential. And the worst thing you can do with these kids is to do nothing. You've got to get them out. But again, no surprises. No
Sure.
surprises.
Right.
Like I was afraid to go to my aunt's ranch when I was 15. Mother gave me a choice. Not going was not one of the choices. I could go, and if I hated it, come right back. Or I could stay all summer. I loved it and I stayed all summer. You got to stretch these kids. You got to stretch these kids to get out and succeed. And you know what influences me a lot more in the medical field is the construction industry. I spent 20 years. Sell a job, design a job. Supervise this construction, start up the equipment. I have worked with every single major meat company. And the thing about working in construction, you have to finish jobs.
Right.
And I don't want to see a smart, geeky kid end up in the basement playing video games when he should be working, making the next iPhone, or maybe doing the next art or great music in Brazil. I don't want to see that happen.
Right. So when you're young, socialization is a difficulty for kids on the spectrum, right?
You got to just teach them.
So talk about that.
You got to teach kids social skills, like teaching somebody how to behave in a foreign country.
Right.
Like if I walked up to somebody and told them you're fat, my mother would pull me aside and say that's rude. So how did I learn what rude behavior is? Well, sticking my tongue out at church would be rude. Telling a lady's fat rude, as just corrected as I do it. Or pushing and shoving in line is rude.
Right.
Now in China, it seems to be okay to push and shove at the airport.
Right.
It's not okay here.
Right. Because I realized since I've been here, you get so many phone calls. It sounds like you developed a great group of friends. We're here at your friend's house. And that's what I tell children, that the importance of relationships and creating new friendships.
Where the people on the spectrum get most of their friends, there's shared interest. Rosalie and I are both very interested both in autism and in artistic things.
Sure.
That is a shared interest. My best friends in high school were into horses, model rockets, or electronics. This is why I want to get kids into shared interests. We have a youth farm program here called the FFA. I recommend that. Get into the school play, band, choir, all the musical things, art, robotics. This is where the kids are going to find friends.
Right. And is that an important part of your life now as an adult?
Well, absolutely. But I see too many parents holding the child back. Like, one little girl wanted to raise chickens, and we have a farm program where youth can raise chickens, and then they get to show their chicken.
Yeah.
And the mom was afraid to enroll her in that. I said, you're going to have chickens in the backyard now. Get over it. Put her in the program. That's just the sort of thing that you want to get these kids involved in.
Right.
Get to show your animal. And even people sometimes in the city can do rabbits or chickens, and then you get to show it with the other kids. Get to show your animal at the show. See, that gets into the shared interest. There's all sorts of different things. In this country, we have a shortage of auto mechanics. Well, let's get kids interested when they're 13 in fixing lawnmowers and find out that engines are cool.
Right.
They're going to have a job as an auto mechanic. We have a huge shortage of mechanics right now.
And if they love working with that would be amazing for them
But they have
right?
no way of knowing if they're going to like engines unless they try it.
Right.
And we need to be getting kids interested young.